Step into the shadows of the past with The Mummy's Memories, a spine-chilling horror series where an ancient pharaoh returns through blood, betrayal, and forgotten rituals. When a museum exhibit awakens a centuries-old curse, one woman must confront not just history, but a terrifying truth buried within her own soul. Chapter 1: Whispers Behind the Glass. The museum was a cathedral of silence. After hours, its marble halls became crypts of history, lit only by the faint amber glow of emergency lights. The echoes of footsteps, so mundane during the day, transformed into ominous reverberations against stone and steel. Tonight, something was different. The air felt heavier, dense with a scent of old incense and decay. Olivia Mercer, the museum's newly appointed night curator, locked the front doors with a mechanical clunk, her breath fogged in the cold autumn air as she turned to face the dimly lit foyer. It was her first solo shift, and despite the rational explanation she told herself, an unease prickled at her neck. She glanced at the Egyptian exhibit at the end of the corridor, the eternal majesty of Amenhotep. The centerpiece was the museum's pride, a remarkably preserved mummy enclosed in a temperature-controlled glass sarcophagus. Its linen wrappings were near pristine, and its golden death mask gleamed with an unnatural luster. As Olivia made her rounds, with her flashlight sweeping over busts, relics, and plaques, a soft noise broke the silence. Shh! Tap, tap, tap. She stopped. The sound had come from the Egyptian wing. Furrowing her brow, Olivia walked cautiously, her footsteps muffled by the carpet runner. The tapping grew louder, irregular. Tap, 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 like fingers drumming glass. She turned the corner. The gallery stood empty. She shone her flashlight over the exhibits, ancient tools, scrolls, statues of gods with animal heads. Nothing was out of place. Then her light caught the sarcophagus. A faint fog had formed on the inside of the glass. "No, that's not possible," she whispered. The chamber was sealed. No condensation could form from the outside. Heart pounding, Olivia approached the mummy's case. The fog slowly cleared on its own, as though wiped by an unseen hand. Beneath it, the death mask of Amenhotep stared blankly back. Suddenly, a loud clang echoed from the main hallway. Olivia jumped, nearly dropping her flashlight. She spun around. The sound had come from the artifact room next door. She should report it, but her radio only returned a burst of static. Swallowing hard, she stepped into the adjacent room. The set hit her first, rot, the unmistakable stench of something long dead. She gagged. Artifacts littered the ground, broken pottery, toppled busts. In the center of the mess lay the shattered display case of a ceremonial dagger. The blade was gone, and on the wall, scratched in the dust, were symbols. "He remembers." A whisper tickled her ear. "Anubis waits." She turned sharply, no one there. Just the faint sound of shuffling linen. Behind her, swish, swish. Olivia bolted back to the sarcophagus. The glass was now fully fogged. A handprint was pressed against it from the inside. The next morning, the museum's director, Dr. Calvin Miles, found Olivia in the security office, pale and trembling. "You're saying the mummy moved?" he asked. skepticism painted across his features. She didn't answer. She just replayed the security footage. The screen flickered. It showed the empty hallways at 3:17 a.m. Then, movement. A dark shadow, slow and jerky, passed across the hallway. The camera glitched. The next frame showed the sarcophagus with a crack running along the edge. And the mummy was gone. Only the mask remained inside. A soft whisper echoed through the footage, barely audible. He remembers what they did. Dr. Miles reached for the monitor, his hands trembling. Olivia stared at the screen, her mouth dry. Outside, in the Egyptian exhibit, the air was colder than usual. And if one listened closely enough, beneath the hum of the lights, they could hear it. Tap, 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 from inside the glass. Chapter 2. The night it blinked. The museum remained closed the following day. A vague notice on the door citing technical difficulties. No news channels reported it. No official announcements were made. But the staff whispered. Whispers about Olivia's scream, about the glass case, about the mummy that blinked. Olivia didn't go home. She couldn't. Dr. Miles insisted she stay, partly for observation, mostly for answers. She remained in the break room. A paper cup of untouched coffee cradled in her hands, staring into space as if something ancient had branded her soul. Night fell again, and the silence of the museum returned like a lid over a coffin. At precisely 9:13 p.m., the security system registered a low-frequency interference. Cameras blinked. A soft hum vibrated through the stone foundation. An inaudible frequency felt more than heard, like the deep tremor before an earthquake. Dr. Miles, now alone in the security room, furrowed his brow. Again, he muttered. Same time as last night. He tapped at the console, bringing up the live feed of the Egyptian exhibit. The sarcophagus stood intact, but the death mask was missing. His heart skipped. The feed stuttered. He zoomed in. Something moved, not in front of the camera, behind the glass. A shadow shifted just beyond the lens's edge. Something that shouldn't move. Something wrapped in aged linen. He leaned forward, and then, in the flicker of one frame, it happened. The mummy blinked. Dr. Miles fell backward in his chair. He scrambled to his feet and reached for the emergency phone. No dial tone, just crackling static. And behind that, voices. Low, guttural voices, speaking in a dialect long dead. Ankh, Keperu, Jesser. The walls of the security room seemed to tremble. The lights overhead buzzed erratically, casting strobe-like flashes. And then, thud, from somewhere above. Thud, thud. It was walking. Olivia awoke in a cold sweat, heart racing. She had dozed off in the break room chair, but something had yanked her out of sleep, like a hand grabbing her spine. A whisper lingered in the air. Olivia. She sat upright. Hello? No answer. Just the soft hum of the air vents and a faint dragging sound in the hallway. Shh, shh. She crept to the door and opened it a crack. Darkness loomed on the other side. Then a soft thud, followed by another and another. Like bare feet slapping against tile. And then it stopped, right outside the door. Olivia's breath hitched. A pause. Silence. Then knock, knock, knock. 3 deliberate knocks on the break room door. She stepped back, pulse pounding in her ears. Suddenly, the door handle began to twist. Her scream never left her throat. It caught there like a stone. The handle turned fully, then stopped. Silence again. Olivia backed away slowly, reaching for the wall-mounted fire axe, when her eyes fell on the television in the corner. It flickered on by itself, a static screen. Then an image. The sarcophagus. But inside it now, lying completely still, was Dr. Miles. His eyes were wide open, mouth agape, and above him stood a figure cloaked in tattered linen, its face now bare. It had no eyes. Just hollow sockets that wept black ichor. Olivia let out a scream, the sound bouncing through the break room like shattering glass. The door swung open, but nothing was there. Only footprints, wet, dusty footprints leading away down the hall. Somewhere deep in the museum, in the heart of the Egyptian exhibit, the sarcophagus stood open. Inside it was the death mask, but its face had changed. Where once was a calm royal visage, now bore a twisted, snarling expression. Its eyes were open, and it was blinking, once, twice, slowly, as if adjusting to the light after a long, long slumber. From within the tomb-like halls of the museum, a low chant began to rise. He remembers. He remembers. And in the shadows, linen shifted again. The Pharaoh had awoken, and he was not alone. Chapter 3. The Curator's Secret. The morning after Dr. Miles' disappearance, the museum was in disarray, though only a few noticed. The Egyptian exhibit had been sealed off with yellow caution tape, and Olivia stood just beyond it, eyes hollow, staring at the empty sarcophagus. The death mask had vanished again. No blood, no body, no signs of forced entry, just the lingering chill of something ancient watching. Detective Rachel Brenner had been assigned the case, a seasoned investigator with little patience for myths. Her heels clicked sharply on the polished stone floor as she approached Olivia. "Start from the beginning," Brenner said, voice calm but firm. Olivia opened her mouth, but hesitated. What could she say? That a mummy blinked? That it moved at night and whispered her name? That Dr. Miles' corpse had appeared on a phantom television feed? She simply pointed to the glass, now wiped clean of all fog and fingerprints. Brenner scoffed. "This is vandalism. Maybe someone's idea of a twisted joke." But even as she said it, her eyes betrayed unease. The museum felt wrong. Not haunted in the classic sense. No rattling chains or cold spots. Just a heavy, almost sentient silence that grew thicker the deeper one walked. Later that day, as Olivia sat reviewing the last security footage before the system fried, she caught something unusual. At 2:36 a.m., a figure slipped through the rear staff entrance. It wasn't Dr. Miles. It was Harlan Kessler, the former curator, a man presumed dead 2 years ago in a car crash on Route 6. But there he was, older, leaner, dressed in black, and walking with a limp. His face appeared briefly under a flickering light. The same angular jaw, the same thin scar under his right eye. Olivia paused the footage. Her blood ran cold. She needed answers. That night, Olivia returned. She waited until the museum was dark, then slipped into the restricted archives using Dr. Miles' keycard, now mysteriously found on her desk earlier that morning. The air in the basement was stale. Dust clung to every surface like a second skin. The scent of parchment and mildew thickened with every step. Somewhere, a pipe dripped rhythmically. Plunk, 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 like a countdown. She reached a row of sealed file cabinets marked Curatorial Archives, restricted. Most were locked. One wasn't. Inside, she found dozens of journals, personal logs, curator's notes. But one stood out, a weathered, leather-bound book with a broken clasp. The cover bore a single word, Amenhotep. Her hands trembled as she opened it. March 3rd, 2001. We should not have opened the second sarcophagus. There was something inside it, not meant to be seen by the living. I can still hear it breathing. Kessler, April 15th, 2001. The dreams won't stop. Eyes staring, always staring. I woke to hieroglyphs scrawled on my wall in my own blood. June 6th, 2002. I've hidden the blade. It's the only thing that can stop him. The dagger of Sekhemket. It must never be found. Before Olivia could read more, the lights flickered violently. A deep growl reverberated through the air vents. Grrr! She slammed the drawer shut and backed into a shelf. Ancient relics rattled above her, one crashing to the ground with a deafening shatter. Crash! Then came the voice. Low, hollow, familiar. You shouldn't be here. Olivia spun around. Kessler stood at the edge of the shadows, his face gaunt and eyes sunken like dried fruit. His lips were cracked, and his breath smelled of dust and death. You're dead, she gasped. I should be. He stepped forward, and she noticed he wasn't walking. He was gliding, feet never touching the ground. Kessler raised a trembling hand, gesturing toward the journal. He remembers everything they did to him, Olivia. He remembers the betrayal, the burial, the burning of his name from the stone. They tried to erase him, but you can't erase vengeance. Who is he? She whispered. The Pharaoh, Amenhotep, but not the Amenhotep they teach in schools. This one, he was cursed, buried alive by his enemies, and when he died, he swore to return in flesh and fire. Another growl echoed behind them, this time closer, more wet, salichly, salichly. Olivia grabbed the journal and turned to run. Find the blade, Kessler called after her, or he'll find you. She didn't look back, but she heard it. A screech, not human, high-pitched and metallic, like metal scraping bone. Scree! She burst through the stairwell door, lungs burning, heart thundering. Behind her, the basement fell into silence again. But on one of the walls, etched in red, fresh and wet, she will not forget. The whispers were no longer just behind the glass. They were everywhere. Chapter 4. Dust and Blood. The journal trembled in Olivia's hands as she paced the empty halls of the museum. The polished marble beneath her feet seemed colder now, as if the building itself had been chilled by the presence of something unholy. Outside, rain lashed against the high arched windows. Thunder growled like a waking beast. echoing through the museum's long stone corridors. Olivia's every step stirred a fine layer of dust that shimmered in the pale light. She stopped before the sealed Egyptian exhibit. Behind the caution tape, the sarcophagus stood silent. But she didn't trust silence anymore. Not in this place. She opened the journal again. July 10th, 2003. The dust in the tomb isn't ordinary. It clings to the skin, moves when you breathe. It tastes like copper, like blood. I found a second heart beneath the wrappings, still beating, still beating. Thunder cracked, the lights flickered. A sharp clatter rang out behind her. Clang! She spun around. One of the bronze statues from the adjacent Mesopotamian wing had toppled. It lay on its side, face cracked open. The glass cabinet surrounding it had been shattered from the inside. As she approached, she noticed something strange. Smeared across the polished floor were muddy footprints, bare, long-toed and dragging. Schlick, schlurk. The sound of something wet being pulled across stone. She followed them, flashlight beam trembling, heart pounding. The trail led to the basement door ajar. The same door she'd fled through last night. She descended slowly, each creak of the steps echoing into the depths like bones snapping underfoot. Down in the archives, the air was thick. The dust no longer floated gently, it swirled, alive, almost breathing. A low chant echoed from the far side of the basement. Jesser, Jesseru, Kepper. It wasn't her imagination. Something was praying. She rounded a corner and froze. Blood. It stained the walls in broad strokes, like brushwork on a canvas. Ancient symbols, painted in crimson. One of them pulsed faintly. In the center of the chamber knelt a man. Harlan Kessler. He was carving into his own palm with a jagged piece of obsidian, letting the blood drip onto a stone tablet. Olivia gasped. His eyes met hers. "It's the only way to slow him," Kessler whispered. His voice raw and shaking. "Blood is the only key the dead understand." She stepped closer. "You're not well." "I'm alive, Olivia." "That's more than I can say for the rest of them." He gestured toward the shadows. Behind him were several bodies, museum workers she hadn't even realized were missing. All perfectly preserved, wrapped in linen. Their eyes had been removed. She screamed. The walls responded. Boom, boom, boom. 3 deafening knocks. Not on a door, but as if the earth itself was being struck. The dust exploded upward like geysers, revealing ancient footprints glowing faintly on the floor. Then a whisper. "She bleeds as the ancients bled." Olivia turned to run, but something grabbed her ankle. A hand, gray, cracked, but warm, alive. She kicked and broke free, scrambling up the steps. Behind her, a scream erupted from the depths, not human. A shriek of agony and hunger. Shriek! Ah! She slammed the basement door shut and collapsed against it, chest heaving. When she looked down, her ankle was smeared with blood, but not hers. Dust and blood. At dawn, Olivia met with Detective Brenner in the staff lounge. The detective's eyes were bloodshot. "I reviewed your camera footage. It's corrupted. But before it glitches out, I saw something. A figure. behind you, every time you pass a camera, a shadow in the shape of a man. Amenhotep. Brenner didn't laugh. Instead, she pulled a folder from her coat and opened it. Inside were photos, old, yellowed, grainy. They showed the original excavation of Amenhotep's tomb. In one, barely visible behind the team of smiling archaeologists, stood a shadow, humanoid, unmoving. In every photo it was there. Same spot, same stance, unchanged. I think this thing's been following anyone who touches the tomb, Brenner said quietly. And now it's following you. Outside, the wind howled, and from somewhere inside the museum, the unmistakable sound echoed again. Tap, tap, tap. Whispers. And then, footsteps. Chapter 5. Hieroglyphs that breathe. By the following evening, the museum felt like it had been swallowed whole by something older than time itself. The lights flickered with more urgency, like the building was trying to blink warnings through artificial eyes. And in every corridor, a new sensation had begun to grow, a tightness in the chest, like the air itself was too thick to inhale. Olivia stood in the eastern wing, surrounded by weathered sandstone walls adorned with sacred carvings. She could barely hear her own breathing over the low hum vibrating through the walls, like a chant stuck between frequencies. Detective Brenner was beside her, holding a copy of the journal. They had agreed to return to the oldest part of the museum, the original exhibit hall where Amenhotep's first artifacts were displayed after their excavation in 1973. Here, Olivia pointed at a section of hieroglyphs on the wall. These weren't here last week. The symbols shimmered faintly as if recently etched, but no tools had been used. No restoration crew had touched this wing in over a decade. Brenner touched the surface. It was warm. Suddenly, a hiss of air escaped from behind the stones. Psst. Both women stalled back. The wall exhaled. What the hell was that? Brenner whispered. Olivia leaned forward again. The hieroglyphs began to shift. Not crumble, not peel. They moved, rearranging themselves like sliding tiles. The eye of Horus blinked. A snake curled inward. A scarab began to crawl. I'm not hallucinating, am I? No, Brenner muttered. You're not. A soft clicking echoed from the walls, like thousands of tiny claws tapping stone. Click, click, click. Suddenly, a section of the wall split open, revealing a hidden passage. Behind it, nothing but darkness. Don't, Brenner warned, but Olivia had already stepped forward. The passage smelled of myrrh, dust, and rot. As they entered, the light from their flashlights danced across murals unlike anything in recorded Egyptian history. Scenes of rituals, of flaying, of living priests offering their own tongues to a blackened deity with empty eyes. I've never seen these gods before, Brenner said. They weren't gods, Olivia murmured. They were cursed men, followers of Amenhotep after he was erased from the records. The passage opened into a small chamber with a single stone altar. On it sat a papyrus scroll, glowing faintly with gold ink. As Olivia approached, the ink began to writhe hieroglyphs, flowing across the page like rivers of molten metal. Then she heard it. Whispers, breathing, moaning, like a crowd of invisible mouths speaking at once. Her hand trembled as she reached for the scroll. The moment her fingers grazed it, scream! A sound like tearing sinew and screaming metal exploded from the walls. The hieroglyphs on the altar shot upward, crawling across the walls, the floor. The ceiling spreading like veins of dark light. The chamber shook. Brenner grabbed Olivia's arm. "We need to move, now!" They ran. The passage collapsed behind them with a thunderous roar. Boom! Dust chased them like a tidal wave. They barely dove out into the eastern wing before the entrance caved in, sealing whatever had been trying to emerge. Both women coughed violently, lungs choked with the ash-like dust. As they sat up, Olivia realized something was burned into her forearm. A single symbol, a marking from the scroll. "It branded me," she whispered. Brenner examined it. "Looks like a cartouche with a name inside." "Whose name?" Olivia turned pale. "Amenhotep's, but not his royal title. This is his true name." From behind the walls came a low groan, like an old god stretching after millennia of slumber. Then a laugh, not joyous, not sane. A dry, raspy laugh that filled the museum and sent the lights into another fit of flickering. He knew, he saw, he remembered, and now he could speak. Chapter 6. Echoes from the Tomb. The museum was no longer just a building. It had become a body, a living, haunted thing, with corridors as veins and the central exhibit hall as a pulsing, malignant heart. Olivia felt it with every step she took. The walls groaned. The floors vibrated faintly, like breath being held too long. She stood outside the sealed eastern wing, her arms still sore from the brand etched by the living hieroglyphs. Brenner paced behind her, muttering to herself as she checked her service weapon. The air smelled of incense and old rot, the aroma of something sacred left to decay. Olivia held the journal tightly. In the margins of one torn page, Kessler had scribbled something that had stayed in her mind since the night before. The echoes aren't just sounds. They are memories trapped in stone, bleeding through time. Somewhere deep inside the museum, a soft thump echoed. Then another. Thump, thump, thump. Followed by a dragging sound. Shh! It was getting closer. "We can't stay here," Brenner said. "Whatever it is, it knows we're listening." Olivia nodded. "Then let's listen back." They made their way to the sound archive room, an old, largely forgotten wing beneath the main floors where audio recordings of historical narrations, guided tours, and rare phonographs were stored. Olivia hoped the room's deep recording equipment could pick up something human ears couldn't. The lights inside the archive were dim and flickering. Rows of reels lined the walls, tapes dated from the 1940s to the early 2000s. Brenner powered on the central console. The equipment sparked to life with a low buzz. Olivia inserted a blank reel and turned on the microphone. She didn't speak. She just listened. At first, nothing but static. Then a whisper, soft, ancient. "You opened it." A second voice joined. He breathes through you. A third, we are not gone. We are waiting. Suddenly, a high-pitched screech erupted from the speakers, like metal being torn apart. Screech! The console exploded in sparks, and Brenner screamed, shielding her face. The room plunged into darkness, but the whispers remained. Every surface began to hum with voices low and constant. It was like being trapped in the middle of a crowd. Every voice murmuring just behind your ear. Olivia reached for her flashlight and swept the beam across the walls. The tapes were unraveling themselves, magnetic strips lifting like serpent tongues, writing new lines in the air. Brenner backed toward the door. We're leaving, now! But the door was gone. In its place, a sandstone archway had formed. Beyond it, steps descending. The whispers grew louder. Driven by some compulsion she couldn't explain, Olivia stepped through. The stairwell was tight and dry, lit by torches that shouldn't have been burning. The walls were etched with scenes of burial rites, some violent and unholy. The deeper they went, the colder it became. Finally, they reached a burial chamber. ... At the center lay an enormous black sarcophagus, surrounded by relics that pulsed with a dim red glow. The air here didn't move. It simply hung, thick and suffocating. And then they heard it. A voice, no longer a whisper. Do you remember me? The lid of the sarcophagus began to shift, stone grinding against stone. Grrrk! It didn't open completely, just enough to show a hand, ancient, shriveled, twitching. Brenner raised her gun. Don't move! Olivia laughed bitterly. I don't think it obeys guns. The room's temperature plummeted. The walls began to weep black fluid. Symbols glowed brighter. Then, one by one, the reliefs on the walls began to move, not just shift, but act. They reenacted Amenhotep's betrayal, his priests binding him, sealing him alive, gouging his eyes, and carving curses into his flesh. Olivia dropped to her knees. I can see it, she whispered. It's not just echoing sound, it's echoing suffering. A scream cut through the room, but it wasn't from either of them. It came from the tomb itself. Ah! It sounded like a man on fire. A soul flayed open. The sarcophagus trembled violently. The hand gripped the edge. Another scream followed. Brenner grabbed Olivia. Now, before it opens completely. They turned and ran back up the stairs as the sound of stone shattering filled the chamber. Crack, thud, slam. Something was coming after them. As they reached the top, the sandstone arch collapsed behind them, turning back into smooth museum tile. Silence returned, but not peace. Every display in the hallway was now turned around. Every statue faced the wall, except one. A new figure, unfamiliar, stood among them, wrapped in linen, and its head turned slowly to watch them as they passed. The echoes from the tomb had escaped, and they remembered everything. Chapter 7. The Curse Awakens. Outside, a storm had begun to build. Thunder rolled over the city like the low growl of some slumbering beast, and flashes of lightning illuminated the museum's towering silhouette. The wind screamed through the trees, rattling branches against the old stone facade. Inside, the darkness was thicker than night should allow, as though something within had devoured the light. Olivia and Detective Brenner stood in the main exhibit hall, both still breathless from the escape through the collapsing passage. The memory of the screaming sarcophagus and the reanimated murals was still burned into their minds. Olivia looked around. The statues, they moved. Brenner nodded slowly. They're facing away now, all of them. Except for one, the new figure that hadn't been there before. It stood tall among the artifacts, wrapped in linen, with gold amulets pressed into its bandages. It bore a headdress of obsidian and bone. Where its eyes should have been, there were hollow sockets, yet both women felt its gaze pierce them. Olivia took a step toward it. Krrrk! The statue's head turned slightly. No, Brenner said. It's not a statue. From deep inside the museum, a sound rose, first low, almost imperceptible. A deep rumbling that vibrated through the floor. Then it grew louder. Boom! 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 Like massive footfalls approaching. Suddenly, the temperature dropped. Frost bloomed across the marble floors, crawling outward like spider webs of ice. The glass panels on the exhibit cases began to crack, not from impact, but from pressure, a pressure not of this world. Crick, crick, crack. Olivia clutched her arm. The brand the cartouche from the scroll was burning hot. She fell to her knees. From above, chandeliers began to sway. Dust rained down from the domed ceiling. Then came a howl. Inhuman, agonized, furious. Wah! The sound shattered several display cases and sent a ringing through their ears that made both women double over. Lights exploded in sparks. Darkness consumed the hall. Only Olivia's flashlight remained, its beam trembling with her hands. And in that narrow cone of light, they saw him. Amenhotep. No longer confined to stone or vision, he stood at the far end of the hall, his wrappings trailing like smoke, his form partially translucent, as if not fully pulled into this world yet. His mouth was sewn shut by blackened threads, but he exhaled smoke with each breath, ash and embers leaking from his nostrils. Around his neck hung the dagger of Sekhemket. He has the blade, Olivia whispered. Brenner drew her weapon and fired. Bang, bang, bang! The bullets passed through Amenhotep's body, striking the walls behind. He didn't flinch. Instead, he raised one hand, and with a sickening snap, the marble floor beneath Brenner's feet fractured, throwing her backward into a column. She screamed and hit the ground, coughing blood. "Brenner!" Olivia cried. Amenhotep began walking forward slow, deliberate, each step leaving behind blackened footprints that sizzled against the floor. "Why now?" Olivia whispered. "Why return?" The mummy stopped. And in a voice not spoken, but felt in the walls, in her skull, he answered, "Because my name lives again." The cartouche on Olivia's arm began to pulse, glowing brighter. From behind her, a burst of light erupted. She turned. Kessler. He stood in the doorway, robes tattered, face pale. "He marked you," he said. "You are his tether. Through you, he returns. but through you, he can be sealed again." "What do I do?" Olivia cried. "You must read his true name aloud. Complete the ritual. Burn the scroll with his name while speaking it. Only then will he be bound." "I don't remember it." "You don't need to," Kessler whispered. "It's inside you now," Amenhotep roared. Rah! The ceiling began to crumble. Ancient sand poured from cracks above, flooding the hall. Olivia reached into her satchel and pulled out the scroll. It was glowing, burning her hands as she held it. Brenner staggered to her feet, blood running down her cheek. "Do it, Olivia, now!" Amenhotep was almost upon them. His eyes, or what remained of them, burned with hatred. Olivia raised the scroll and spoke. "Nesupiti, Amenhotep Jeser-Ka." Amenhotep screamed and lunged. Olivia struck a match. The scroll ignited. The flames turned blue. The air rippled. Amenhotep froze mid-step, his body unraveling into threads of smoke and sand. Sssss! The fire consumed the scroll, and with it, the mummy exploded into a vortex of ash, screaming as he was sucked into the void. "Na, na!" Then silence. The lights flickered. The glass stopped shaking. The museum exhaled, and all around them the statues turned back, facing forward once more. The curse had awoken, but it had not yet finished speaking. Chapter 8. The Pharaoh Remembers. Long after the scroll had turned to ash and Amenhotep's form had collapsed into dust, the museum remained still. Too still. Outside, the storm had passed, but the clouds hung low, like bruises in the sky. Lightning no longer struck, but a constant rumble vibrated just beneath the air, as if the heavens themselves were murmuring warnings. Olivia sat alone in the break room, her hands still trembling. The scent of burnt parchment lingering in her clothes. Detective Bretter lay resting in the infirmary wing, her injuries grave but stable. And Kessler, he had vanished once again, like a shadow that only appeared when the world was darkest. The museum was supposed to be safe now, but Olivia felt it. Something had changed. That night, she returned to the Egyptian exhibit. The statues had turned back toward the center. The sarcophagus was sealed once more, but in front of it, carved into the floor where the scroll had burned, was a new symbol, an open eye, bleeding, and just beside it, scrawled in red dust. "He remembers." Suddenly, a sound broke the silence, a deep, guttural breath. It came from the sarcophagus. Olivia's flashlight flickered. "No," she whispered. "You're gone. I destroyed your name." But the air disagreed. It thickened again, filled with a humming so deep it felt like it vibrated her bones. From behind her, the shadows shifted. She spun around, but saw no one. Only the faint echo of footsteps. Click, click, drag. She backed away slowly, her breath fogging despite the heat. Then, from behind the sarcophagus, a voice. Not whispered, not shouted, just spoken, clearly, calmly. "You took my name, but not my memory." The sarcophagus lid didn't move, but the voice was real. It echoed off the walls and through the floor. I remember the priests who betrayed me. I remember the fire, the hunger, the silence beneath the stones. Olivia shook her head. You're dead. Memory cannot die, and vengeance does not sleep. Suddenly, the carvings along the sarcophagus lit with red light, each symbol glowing like fresh embers. The lid began to tremble. Rrrnk! Cracks formed across its surface. Then a piercing shriek as though the world itself had been torn. Sss! Rom! Olivia fell to the ground, hands over her ears. The museum lights exploded. Sparks rained from the ceiling. A blast of wind, like a desert storm, swept through the exhibit. When she looked up, the sarcophagus was open, but it was empty. Instead, something was carved into the wall behind it, a mural. New. It depicted Amenhotep not as a corpse, but as a man, alive, crowned, seated upon a throne of bones. Surrounding him were figures bowing in fear, and in his hand he held a scroll made of skin, her skin. Olivia stumbled backward, heart racing. She turned and ran toward the exit. The hallway had changed. The museum was no longer itself. The walls had turned to sandstone. Torches burned with black flames. Every display was gone, replaced with scenes of torture, sacrifice, and ancient rituals. She was inside his memory. No, he was inside hers. Voices began to chant. Ankh, Jesser, Ket, Amenhotep returns. She clutched her arm. The brand was glowing again, but not with pain, with clarity. Flashes of visions filled her mind. Amenhotep as a child, watching his father's murder, his rise to power, his betrayal by the high priests, his burial alive, screaming, bound in chains of onyx. The spell to erase him, the curse he uttered in his final breath. And then Olivia saw herself. Standing among the priests, holding the dagger, it wasn't just memory. It was reincarnation. Olivia, a voice snapped. She blinked. Brenner was standing over her, shaking her. You blacked out. The museum was back. The hallway normal. The torches gone. The mural vanished. But the brand still glowed. I was there, Olivia whispered. Not just in his memory, in my own. I was part of it. What are you saying? Brenner asked. Olivia's voice cracked. I helped bury him. And from the shadows, unseen by either of them, the wind whispered through the air ducts. A voice not carried by breath, but by vengeance. Then you will help me rise. ... Chapter 9. Eyes in the Darkness. The lights in the museum never stayed on for long anymore. Each time Olivia flipped a switch, a flicker of artificial brightness would bloom, then sputter, before giving way to deep, suffocating shadow. The museum no longer obeyed the laws of physics or reason. It shifted, it sighed, it waited. That night, the emergency lights buzzed a dull red glow, casting every hallway in a dim, blood-like hue. Shadows no longer crept, they watched. Olivia could feel them, not just around her, but inside her thoughts. Every room she entered, something was always just behind her, barely seen, but never absent. She stood in the center of the Hall of Kings, surrounded by colossal statues of ancient rulers, their eyes carved with obsidian, glinting like stars swallowed in pitch. Brenner limped in beside her, still recovering from Amenhotep's attack. Her left arm was in a sling, her right clutching a flashlight like a weapon. "You're sure about this?" she asked, voice hoarse. Olivia nodded. "I think he left something behind when he stepped into me." Brenner glanced around nervously. "Yeah, well, let's not wait until he steps back out." From somewhere in the museum, a sharp clink echoed. Clink, clink, drag. Footsteps, metal scraping stone. Both women froze. Olivia turned slowly toward the noise. Brenner raised her light and aimed it down the corridor. Nothing. Then eyes, dozens, reflective, unblinking, nestled in the darkness beyond the beam of light. Brenner whispered, "They're everywhere." Suddenly, the eyes blinked and vanished. A hiss of breath blew past them, raising the hairs on their arms. Whoosh! The statues began to tremble. Olivia reached into her coat and pulled out the last relic Kessler had given her, a fragment of a broken mirror etched with hieroglyphs. "He said it reveals truth," she said. She held it up. The reflection showed what the eye could not. Behind each statue, a figure thin, wrapped in linen, hollow-eyed, stood pressed to the wall, perfectly still. There were dozens of them, mummified guards, not statues, sentinels. Suddenly, all lights died. Darkness, total. Then a screech. "Screamia!" Brenner fired blindly. The muzzle flash revealed one of the linen-wrapped sentinels lunging forward, mouth open, teeth blackened and long. The bullet tore Hewitt's skull, but it kept coming. They ran. Down corridors that shifted as they moved. Staircases led to walls. Doors opened to sand. Every inch of the museum was being rewritten, twisting into Amenhotep's labyrinth of memory and vengeance. Olivia grabbed Brenner's hand. "The archive room! There's a backup generator there!" They turned sharply and entered the narrow hallway leading to the sound archive. The door was open. Inside, pitch black. "I'll go first," Olivia whispered. She stepped in, and immediately she felt them. The eyes. Not physical, not just reflective, but living, breathing, watching. "Don't turn on your flashlight," she whispered. "They see light, but they move in darkness." From behind them came the sound again. Thump, drag, thump, drag. And a whisper so close it felt like it brushed Olivia's cheek. "You wore the mask once. You will again." She turned quickly. Only darkness. Then the emergency backup lights kicked in. A faint orange glow revealed the room empty. Until the eyes opened. Hundreds of them, on the walls, the floor, even the ceiling. They blinked in unison and then began to weep. Dark, thick tears of ink oozed from them, dripping onto the floor, forming words. "She must remember," Brenner gasped. "What the hell is this?" The floor vibrated. The ink pulled faster, crawling up Olivia's boots, reaching her hands, painting her arms. Images flooded her mind. A memory not hers but familiar. Sand, torches, chanting. She stood over Amenhotep, blade raised, his eyes terrified, pleading. And she did nothing. She watched as they buried him alive, and she whispered the curse because she believed he deserved it. "Olivia!" Brenner shouted. She blinked back into the present. The eyes had vanished, the ink gone. Only one word remained etched into the floor beneath her: judgment. A soft creak came from behind them. They turned. The doorway was filled with figures, tall, silent, watching. And behind them, Amenhotep, not as a mummy, but reborn, skin reformed, golden jewelry gleaming, eyes glowing with centuries of rage. "Now," he said, his voice shaking the room, "you remember." And then, with a wave of his hand, the lights died, and the eyes in the darkness opened once more. Chapter 10. The Last Ritual. Time fractured in the moments after the lights died. Olivia couldn't tell how long they had stood in the pitch-black archive room. Seconds felt like hours. The air was dense with unspoken words, with the smell of scorched dust and something older like scorched blood. Somewhere nearby, something breathed. Hurk, hurk. Not the slow exhale of lungs, but of something waiting to inhale her. Brenner's fingers gripped her arm in the dark. A silent reassurance, a last tether to reality. Then a light, not electric, but golden, flickering like fire trapped beneath water. It came from the cracks in the museum floor, glowing veins spreading outward like an ancient map awakening. Olivia's brand responded, pulsing in tandem. Amenhotep stepped forward from the shadows, no longer undead, no longer spectral. He was fully formed, majestic, terrifying, crowned in black gold, his body wrapped in priestly linen woven with runes, his skin the hue of buried bone, and his eyes, those bottomless, burning eyes, saw through centuries. Behind him, the sentinels stood in reverent silence. "You remember now," he said. His voice echoed, not just in the room, but in Olivia's skull, like her thoughts had been replaced by his words. "You bound me. You whispered my damnation, and now you will set me free." Olivia's breath caught. "You're already free." Amenhotep raised his hand. The museum shuddered. Walls melted into stone pillars. Ceiling tiles crumbled to reveal the night sky, vast and starless. Sand poured through the cracks like a waterfall from time itself. They were no longer in the museum. They were in a temple. His temple. In the center, a circular dais formed. Upon it, 3 objects appeared. A bowl filled with ash, a blade made of obsidian, a scroll sealed with wax and blood. Kessler's voice echoed from the void. "The ritual can still bind him." "If you finish what you started," Brenner turned to Olivia, trembling. "You were one of the priests?" "Yes," Olivia said quietly. "But I was also the only one who hesitated. That's why he marked me. Eye of the bridge." Amenhotep stepped onto the dais. "You cannot kill me," he said, "but you can become me. Say the words. Open the scroll. Take your place beside me." The sentinels chanted softly. "Og, Jesser, Ket, Nesu, Bidi, Amenhotep. Olivia stepped forward. The brand burned. She knelt before the scroll. The symbols swirled, written in blood, not on papyrus, but human skin, her own. She looked back at Brenner. If I fail, you run. You burn this place. Don't look back. Brenner nodded. Olivia touched the scroll. It split open. A scream tore through the chamber, but not from Amenhotep, from her. The scroll pulled at her memory, her soul. She saw it all again, his betrayal, his agony, his hatred. Every moment of his death carved into her like hieroglyphs upon stone. The blade rose in her hand. Not hers, but a priest's. The past and present had merged. Amenhotep raised his arms. "Say it!" the chamber roared. The sand rose like a cyclone. The sentinels shrieked. Olivia shouted over the noise. "By name and by blood, I sever you." She plunged the blade into her own palm. Blood splashed onto the scroll. "By the first breath and final curse, I seal you back into the void." The ground split. A crack of pure blackness tore the dais in two. Amenhotep's feet began to sink. He screamed, a sound that shattered time. "Narhane!" The sentinels crumbled into dust. The temple fractured. The stars above blinked out. Olivia fell to her knees. The scroll caught flame white, blinding. The last thing she saw was Amenhotep's face, no longer angry, just tired. Then silence. When she awoke, the museum was back, whole, silent, empty. The sarcophagus was sealed, the scroll gone. Only the blade remained, and her hand scarred with a single word, "Remember." Brenner crouched beside her. "Is it over?" Olivia looked up at the ceiling. For the first time in weeks, the lights stayed on. "I don't know," she whispered. "But if he ever returns, I'll be ready." Outside, the first light of dawn broke through the clouds. But in the darkest corner of the museum, unseen, a single statue turned its head. Its eyes opened, and they glowed.